Netflix's Receiver is out. We have watched the whole thing and we have thoughts. Plus, I have been digging into the Warren Sharp football preview for 2024. It is fantastic. I have a couple of fascinating nuggets for you that I think you're really going to like, Levin. It's the Gold Standard Podcast. Let's get dangerous. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Gold Standard Podcast on the Gold Standard Podcast and the Fans First Sports Networks. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He is Levin Black. Levin, that is the coolest shirt you have ever worn on any show we have ever done together. For the people that aren't watching the stream, tell everyone what you're wearing.
I'm wearing a Darkwing Duck shirt. So one, you stole my line. Let's get dangerous. I was going to say that when you brought me in. Two, this would be the second time I've worn it on the show. But thanks for noticing.
Definitely don't remember another time.
I think I was probably a tighter shot before, so it didn't like. Okay. I remember mentioning I was wearing it and showing it to you, but I don't think you could see it during the stream.
Want to know a super embarrassing fact about my wife that she'd be mad at if she ever listened to the show?
Let's go.
When she was a kid growing up, she had a crush on Darkwing Duck. That probably explains how she ended up married to me.
Oh, yes. You guys are so common.
Yes, we are. Anyway, great show lined up for you today. Levin and I have cranked through every episode of Receiver on Netflix. We've both been cheating a little bit, skipping over the parts that are not 49ers related. But we have thoughts. Plus, I have been reading the Warren Sharp football preview, which is awesome. If you don't want to go buy it, don't worry. I have picked out some of the best parts, and we will talk about them on today's show because obviously they directly relate to the team this coming season. The coolest part about the Receiver show, I thought, Levin, is because the 49ers make the Super Bowl, it essentially becomes a 49ers show because as the season goes along, teams are getting eliminated and there's just more and more stuff about the 49ers. So like it gets better the longer you watch it.
I found it funny. Like it was definitely like, so I thought, okay, I'm just going to skip to the Niners part. And then like half of every episode was the Niners because they were so focused, not so much on Kittle and Deebo. Deebo was obviously a good bit of the show, but he had about the same amount as Amon-Ra and the same amount as Justin Jefferson. But really like, Kittle was the lead of that show. He was in it more than anybody else. And I would even say it's quite possible that Claire Kittle speaks more than anybody else in the show.
Claire definitely got a lot of time. Like Claire and George was a big part of it. I'm sure George was like, look, if we do this, like my wife's going to need to be in it because they clearly have a very close bond. She's obviously a part of his football life and preparation. I was stunned by how tall she is. George Kittle is not a short human being, and his wife, Claire, is not that much shorter than him.
I mean, she played Division I basketball, so
yeah.
I wasn't shocked at that. I knew she played Division I basketball, so.
Well, you know what it is? I remember seeing George in person. He was at the Super Bowl one year when I was producing PFT, and I was stunned at how big George Kittle is in person. Like, he doesn't look like a huge player on the field, but when you're standing next to him, you're like, oh my God, this man's a giant.
Yeah. Completely off topic. I got to go here. Brisby by Life or Brisby Life. Why did I say that wrong? We know who he is. He's around all the time.
I know.
Rob and his wife are going to have a very specific mascot combo to look for the next time they're at Disney. So one, did you see Darkwing Duck? Two, did you just learn that she had a crush on Darkwing Duck during that trip?
No, I've known about the Darkwing Duck thing for a while. I don't know. I don't think I saw him at all. He may not be represented at Disney, which is an insult and a damn shame.
A lot of their like TV shows are not represented there, I believe. Not at the Florida one. I think the California one does. Disneyland does do the TV shows a little bit more.
Brisby Life just gave you the hand on the head because you didn't know how to say his handle there.
Well, I said correct, and then I saw the bye in my mind and said, oh, I got to say bye. Wait, no, crap.
Okay. I talked a little about Receiver with Grant earlier today. We're taping this Wednesday night.
What doomsday scenario came out of that show for Grant?
Well, I don't think he had seen much of it. So he was kind of just reacting to what I was saying. Give me your thoughts and then I can react to those and I'll interject anything new since I actually finished it later this afternoon.
The main takeaway I had, obviously, I'm looking at it from a Niners perspective. I don't know that they'll move on from Deebo. That was my reaction because it is very clear to me Deebo and Kittle egg each other on. They are like fire and brimstone. They are like the animated guys that go around and get everybody else pumped up. Like you saw that in the show a lot. You didn't see Purdy going around and doing it. Now maybe he does, and they didn't show some things because I had that thought when it came to like Ayuk. We know Ayuk talks on the field and he's very like animated after he makes a play and things like that. But we didn't see him much. We didn't see much conversing going on with him between Deebo and Kittle, despite them all being receivers. I don't know if they just cut that out or if it's just not there. But I saw a lot of Kittle and Deebo like going around to teammates, getting them going, especially Kittle. But we even saw like Kittle constantly going to Purdy to try to pick him up. And we saw that from Deebo once or twice too. And it made me think maybe they don't get rid of Deebo after this year because they don't want to lose that. They think that's too valuable to lose.
I don't know. I don't know how much they value that, but he definitely goes around. Like there's a point in the Packers playoff game when he gets hurt and Kittle says it to him like, hey, we need your energy. But he said also like, I had to snap myself out of being mad that I got hurt and give the energy to my team and go around and talk to people and stuff like that. So he's very conscious of that. I also saw there were multiple times when he went to Kyle Shanahan and said like, come on, let's go. I do think that there is, a definite bond there for sure. But you're right about the Purdy angle of it. I don't know, they weren't sure. It wasn't about Brock Purdy. So we don't know how much, he does do that stuff. Although I did notice a couple of times with Brock in the NFC Championship game, Kittle's on the sideline, like telling him like, hey, we got him they had us in the first half or whatever. And Brock is stone faced, not smiling, like he is focused and locked in. And after the NFC Championship game, there's a moment where Kittle's like, let's just enjoy this. And they're in the locker room and it's Bosa, Kittle, and Brock. They're all sitting next to each other in front of the lockers. And Bosa and Kittle, as you would expect, are all smiles. And Brock is sitting there like he still looks like locked in. Now, maybe he just couldn't believe what had happened, but he just looked like locked in, laser focused. And it made me think like, maybe Brock is one of those guys that's wired to just like, I don't know how to describe it. Almost like a Tom Brady, like what championship is my favorite? The next one, like just hyper focused on the ultimate goal. That was my thought when I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, to add to that, you saw them, I believe it was prior to the Super Bowl media day. Deebo was trying to get Brock to wear sunglasses.
Yeah.
And Brock kept saying, no, didn't want to put them on. Deebo said, let's just see how they look. And Kittle's standing there too, if I remember the other person that was there.
Yep.
And he puts them on, and both Kittle and Deebo go, oh, yeah, or something along those lines. And he immediately takes them off and said, like, you can see, he's like, I placated you. I put them on. Now leave me the F alone. I'm not here for that.
And we even noted too, like on the media thing, he wasn't really smiling when he was.
He wasn't looking around. Yeah, that was the thing that I think we said to each other when we were there. That Brock wasn't like looking around, looking at the crowd, trying to soak it in. You saw Mahomes doing that. You saw Kittle doing that. You saw Kelsey doing that. They would look around, they would see people in the crowd, they'd be smiling, they'd be laughing. Brock was just like, I'll answer the question when you talk to me. And other than that, I'm looking straight forward and I'm like somewhere else mentally.
Yeah, I remember thinking that at the time, and that's the thought I had watching it. Tanisha says, I'm with you, Levin. That's what I took from the show. Deebo is a high-value commodity for the 49ers. Shout out to Tanisha and all our YouTube channel members. Thank you very much. Thanks for supporting us. If you want to support us, it's less than $3 a month. You get priority comment response, custom emojis, and membership badges as well. Look, I think Deebo is smart to do the show, quite frankly, because when you watch him and you see what he goes through and you see how the other players react to him, it does make you like him and appreciate him more.
Yeah, I am truly curious how much they cut. Because like we said, like we didn't see Ayuk interacting with them. There were a couple times when we saw them on the sideline where like Kittle or Deebo would say something to Ayuk and there'd be no reaction, but usually it was a pretty quick cut. So maybe Ayuk did say something, but it seems like Ayuk is kind of a quiet type, especially like off the field, even on the sidelines. He's quiet, he's focused, he's not about the like rah. He doesn't go around getting other people. I'm just curious if like there was more Ayuk talking and they just cut it because of time. Same with like Purdy. Like, how much did they edit things? Because like they didn't even cover two of the biggest things because I think they didn't have time. They didn't cover in the Philly game. They spent 15 minutes on the regular season Philly game, a single regular season game.
Yeah.
They spent 15 minutes on. They never had the Dom part of it to
I
get them
know.
riled up or any of that. They showed zero footage. You wouldn't even have known it happened unless you watched the game. And then in the Super Bowl, they didn't even cover Greenlaw's injury at all. Like those things were completely cut. So how much did they truly cut of the other people's personalities?
I'm interested to know that. I wrote that down too. Nothing about Big Dom. Because don't forget too, like at that point in the game, they have the interaction with Dom. Greenlaw gets tossed. Then the Eagles go down and score. And it was like you started to feel like maybe Philly was getting a little momentum. Now, ultimately, it didn't matter because the Niners just continued scoring. But like it's not as if that was an insignificant part of the game, but they didn't cover any of that. And the other thing I noticed too, by the way, Andre says it seems like that's one of Brock's good traits. He locks in because he knows he has to. Did you notice in the sit-down interviews, the one-on-ones that they did, Brock Purdy has his wedding ring on, which means
I did not
they
notice that part.
didn't. That means they didn't do those during the year. They did those after the season because Brock didn't get married till March. So I thought that was interesting too, because we know that Kyle famously has a hatred of Hard Knocks and doesn't want that distracting the team. And I wonder if he was like, look, if you want me to be involved in this thing, I'll do it after the season. Because I noticed that Brock's sit downs, he had the wedding ring on. And I was like, wait a minute. I had to Google it real quick. Like, when did Brock get married? And it was March. So it was after the year.
I mean, I did notice from Kittle that his interviews all took place same day because he had a red mark on his face right here on his like between his lips and his chin. I don't know what area you want to call it. It's not truly his chin because it was off to the side, but he had that. But every time they showed him in the one-on-one interview, he had that. So I was like, okay, all these times he's talking about all these regular season games. It wasn't something that like once a week for an hour they get him to do an interview to talk about the previous week and then they cut it up. It was after the year they did one interview because even in the Super Bowl he had that. So that meant all those interviews had to be after. But I didn't make the connection with Brock and the ring and all that.
Well, some people care about watching it for the people and some people don't. You're just a selfish
I
jerk.
just don't stare at other men's hands to see if they're married. Sorry.
Yeah. You know what I noticed too is like he always had the left hand like facing the camera, right? So like I am now, you could see the ring. It always was like out there. And I always wondered like, hey, if they did this right after he got married, maybe he was, throwing it out there a little bit, wanted to show it off a little bit. Who knows? But I was really interested to see after the Super Bowl, which by the way, it still hurts watching the Super Bowl.
I did not enjoy it because I have avoided it.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I really had to like rewatch it and relive it. And they started that dang part with reliving the 2020 Super Bowl first.
I know that's true.
So it was like, okay, I've avoided that for 4 years and you just threw that in my face. And now I got to watch 20 minutes of this Super Bowl. Yeah. How close they were and how much they should have won if the defense just held a single time. Yeah. Like I was surprised they didn't frame it that way a little bit more. That was one thing that I thought of. Like they didn't quite like hammer home the point that the offense, as I said last week, the offense had the lead every time they left the field in the fourth quarter and overtime. They didn't hammer home like the defense just has to stop them once.
Like, they did mention it on the one
right.
time, but yeah, they didn't get into the repeated blown leads. Shades of Idiocy on Twitch. Shout out to the Twitch fam says, let's pray Brock's wedding ring isn't the only one he ever gets to show off. Agreed. So after the Super Bowl, Kittle and Deebo talked, and they were like, it's painful, it's sad, it hurts, or whatever. But both of them talked about how they can get back to the Super Bowl this year. Both of them talked about how, like, it wasn't like, oh, we'll never do it again. It was like, hey, we're ready. We're ready to climb that mountain again. We are ready to do it, which, if the interviews took place after the year, is even more encouraging because it shows that, like, they don't have this Super Bowl hangover, that they both are ready to do it again. Like, I don't know. I saw that and I was kind of encouraged. Like, hey, maybe this, isn't this insurmountable task that we kind of think it is sometimes.
Yeah, see, not to burst your bubble, but I had a different take. Not on the end. I thought of it. I think it was the NFC Championship game segment, and Deebo talked about how incredibly hard it was or is to like refocus and come back and do it again and like come out like with a mission. And he said we struggled with that after the Super Bowl in 2019, but we were able to do it this year, meaning last year in the show. So I heard that. I was like, he's talking about how incredibly difficult it is. They just did it. Are they going to have a letdown year where there's like mental fatigue from having come so close? That was my takeaway when he said it.
Well, first of all, I'm stunned you disagree with me. There's a friggin' shock. But don't forget, in 2020, they didn't do it because they got hurt. They had massive injuries in 2020. Kittle got hurt. Jimmy got hurt. Deebo got hurt. Bosa got hurt. Like, they were historically injured that year. So to me, it's the injuries that did it more than a Super Bowl hangover. We don't really know how it would have played out because the team was so drastically altered by all of that. But I don't know. I got the impression like, hey, they think they can climb the mountain again. They're going to need to. And Brock's part of this is not nothing, especially if he does have that sort of like laser focused type A personality, because he doesn't have all the scars that they have. He got hurt in the NFC Championship game in 2022, and obviously they lost the Super Bowl this year. But other than that, like, he's not as battle worn as George Kittle or Deebo or Bosa or all those guys. And he is, obviously the most important piece on offense. So I think that's a point in the 49ers' favor, I think.
I mean, to a certain extent, I would imagine Brock still is like, I can't believe I'm here with this opportunity, because he was Mr. Irrelevant. Like,
he still thinks that though.
I think there's like two faces to it, right? There's two sides to it. Yeah, he 100% believes he's deserving and he's ready, and that he's the guy. But he still has to have something in the back of his brain going, I can't believe everything fell in a way that gave me this chance. Because if those injuries didn't happen in front of me, I may never have been given an opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, that has to still be somewhat in his mind. Not that it's affecting him, but that's like a mental thought of like, yeah, I got incredibly lucky just to be given a chance because of where I was drafted.
I think a normal person would think like that. I don't think Brock does. And athletes, we know, generally do not have the typical like mental makeup of the average person. Because remember when Bosa found him in the locker room and was like, how are you doing this? How are you this good? And what was Brock's instant response? I think I could be better. It wasn't like, I can't believe this is happening. I think that a normal person would think that. I think Brock had that when he first came in his rookie year. I think especially now, I don't think he had it last year, but especially now, I think he's like, this is my team. Let's go. Like, I think that he's past that.
So on a different topic, the Super Bowl part of it, it wasn't the losing, because I knew that was going to happen, but there was one part of it that like really got my blood going again, and I wanted to throw my chair.
I know what this is. Is it this? When Deebo went down, Kittle
said, just in the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay.
The Super Bowl part of it. It was, how incredibly unlucky can we get?
Yes.
Not only are the refs doing everything they can to let the Chiefs win with not calling holding, but you had the Greenlaw injury, which, like I said, they didn't cover, but we know it happened. And then they covered the Kittle and Deebo injuries, and they were serious injuries that did heavily affect them. And both of them said, yeah, like that was really hard to go through. And I was not able to do everything. Like Deebo specifically said, I was not able to do everything that I would have normally done. And Kittle said like his shoulder affected him for a long time. I was actually a little bit annoyed at him because it's typical Kittle. He gets hurt. He refuses to tell anybody. He just tries to deal with it. And then he starts talking about, oh, my shoulder's hurting, but he keeps playing. And it's not until like the very end of the game that he decides to go to the locker room when he can't raise his arm. It's like, why didn't you deal with that in the second quarter, the third quarter? Why are you waiting till the very end? Like, go get it dealt with.
I don't think he got hurt until that fourth down conversion at the end of the fourth quarter. Or maybe it was like the middle, like with like 5 minutes left. I think that's the play he got hurt on. I could be wrong, but
I guess the show might have missed. They didn't say exactly when it was, and they showed like 5 minutes worth of him in play saying like doing blocking or running a route and grimacing and then telling somebody on the sideline. So I took it as it was multiple drives, potentially into the third, maybe even second quarter that it happened.
So the fourth down play happened with 12:46 to go in the fourth quarter. So he essentially, if that's when he got hurt, he essentially played a half of football with a shoulder. He tells Kyle, I think it was before overtime. Kyle's like, dude, like, what's up with you? How hurt are you? Let me know. And George is like, oh, my shoulder's dead. And Kyle's like, so I shouldn't call a play for you, right? And Kittle says, I wouldn't. He said, the only way I can catch a ball is if Brock puts it on my chest because I can't raise my arm to make a catch. And Kyle's like, all right, then. Well, then, I'll deal with it. But so I think that was at the start of overtime, but he was significantly injured. And, I know he took a lot of crap for his performance in the game and or lack thereof. I did not realize he was that hurt at the time.
Yeah. And to finish it for the people that haven't seen it, he plays with it for some amount of time that we're not sure on. But when he does decide to go deal with it, he goes to the locker room and they rub numbing stuff on his arm and it like took it away to where like he was like, wow, I can't believe it. I can raise my arm. It's not really bothering me a whole lot anymore. And he went back and he played the rest of the game. So that's one of the reasons why I was like, God, if you dealt with that earlier, you would have had time in the game to maybe have done something to change the outcome. But instead, you were so hampered, you were not wanting the ball, essentially, because you knew you couldn't raise your arms to catch it.
I did not realize he got that hurt. And, we're going to talk more about the Warren Sharp thing in a second. Let me read this comment. Gray Fox 198 says, we may be the 90s Bills. Maybe it's not meant to be. I don't think the 49ers think that. I don't think they're thinking like that. I think
the Bills didn't think that at the time either. Nobody does until it breaks up and you start losing and you go, crap, it actually is over.
Well, and I don't know that anybody actually, you know what? Let me see. I don't know that anybody went to 4 straight AFC championship games to that point. And well, actually they won the AFC championship game. They lost the Super Bowl. Yeah, I don't know.
4 straight Super Bowls. They were the first.
Yeah, they were the first to go to 4 straight Super Bowls. What was I saying? Something about Kittle being hurt. Oh, yeah. Like the Warren Sharp guide, the Niners were like top 10 one of the top 10 healthiest teams this year. I think they were like the 4th healthiest team, but not in the playoffs. In the playoffs, Deebo got hurt twice, once against the Packers where he basically missed the entire game. Then he gets hurt again in the Super Bowl. Kittle gets hurt in the Super Bowl. Greenlaw gets hurt in the Super Bowl. And look, the 49ers have enough players that they still could have won, but they did have some bad injury luck in the playoffs for sure.
And that is with getting essentially a bye in the final week where a lot of guys got to rest.
Like, right. Yeah, that's true.
How bad would it have been if they had to play that entire game? Like it's frustrating because the Niners have been so close for so many years now. And the only time they haven't gotten it is dumb, bad luck, and it's just, at this point, it's like, okay, I can't take much more of this.
Stephen Duckett, YouTube channel member, says, have to go to the beginning of the show, just finished the Grant show, and you were only 3 episodes into wide receiver. Calm down, sir. Yeah, you know what? I was cranking it out after that. I knew we were going to talk tonight, and I wanted to finish it before you and I spoke. And I started skipping most of the non-49ers parts, although they were pretty interesting. And I will say this as an aside. I don't know if you watched it, Levin, but Devontae Adams just ripping Jimmy Garoppolo to shreds was unbelievable. He says, I got to get out of here. I'm getting hit way too much. Every single game, I'm getting destroyed. I never got hit like this before. He destroys Jimmy Garoppolo in the series. It was fascinating to see. And I just wonder, were the Niners guys saying that same thing about Jimmy, or would they if the 49ers had lost like the Raiders lost? See, that was the difference. The Niners ended up winning most of Jimmy's starts. That didn't happen in Vegas, obviously.
I think we know Jimmy was still popular in that locker room. And I think a lot of that is because they didn't know any better. The people that came before Jimmy were worse than Jimmy. So they didn't know better. Devontae Adams came from Aaron Rodgers and even Derek Carr. And Derek Carr was a lot better than what they had with Jimmy last year. I didn't get to watch a lot of Devontae. It's one of the things I want to go back and watch. It was his segments. But I did watch one part, and I watched that game, and I remember the overthrow. So that's what got me to pause and not skip to the next Niners segment.
Yes.
Because I saw it, and I was like, oh, wait, I watched this game. I remember something happening in this game. And then when the play starts, it came back to me.
Tell people what happened in case they don't remember it or didn't see it.
So Devontae tells Jimmy Garoppolo on the sideline, I don't care. The next time we're going, I forget the type of route he mentioned to Jimmy. The next time that's called, I'm going deep. I don't care. And so Jimmy goes, I got you. And they go in. Devontae does a double move. The corner bites on it. Devontae is open by like 15 yards. And Jimmy overthrows him on a third down. Like, it's a walk-in, super long touchdown. Jimmy just has to put it somewhere that he can catch it. Like, it can be underthrown, and Devontae will still score as long as it's only like 5 to 10 yards underthrown because he was that far open, and Jimmy overthrows him. And I actually posted the quote from Devontae Adams when he was coming off the field after that. He said, and sorry, it's going to be a bleep, this shit is pathetic. So just
throw the damn ball.
Yeah, throw the damn ball. So, yeah, I would definitely say, like, he didn't really catch strays because he was the quarterback of one of the people on the show. But of all the people on the show, the number one person who came off the worst is Jimmy Garoppolo.
And I tweeted out, hearing Devontae Adams complaining about Jimmy Garoppolo and receiver just reinforces how incredible it was that the Niners reached a Super Bowl with that guy at quarterback. And still, there is this loyal army of Jimmy Garoppolo stands that came for me. That tweet has been viewed almost 121,000 times. I mean, people are still trying to cape for Jimmy Garoppolo out there, which is like...
And they chose Jimmy over Brady. Now, I didn't blame... Because that last season Brady had in the Patriots, he definitely looked like he was gone.
Right.
He didn't have his deep ball. He had all kinds of problems in that season. He didn't look like himself.
Right. And I think the Niners, and we've kind of talked about this, I think Kyle was like, can I really get rid of Jimmy after he just made the Super Bowl and replace him with the ancient bones of Tom Brady, not knowing that Tom Brady was going to be really, really good after that. But yeah, the Garoppolo does not come off looking good. Ryan Alloy, thank you very much for the super chat, says, what percentage of fans feel like I do? Happy to be a Niner fan, excited even, but no real expectations of a Super Bowl for numerous reasons. I still expect them to get to the Super Bowl this year. Do you?
That's tough. I feel both sides of it. I mean, I'm disenfranchised to a degree this offseason. Something broke with me during that Super Bowl last year. Like, I'm just, until they actually win, I will not get to that same spot that I was in previous years until they win a Super Bowl, because there's been twice in recent years that I think they have it won because they're up late and then they blow it. So I'm just not like, can they win a Super Bowl? Absolutely. Do I expect them to win a Super Bowl? I think they're certainly talented and they should, but until it happens, like, I'm done predicting it.
Ryan Lloyd follows up. Even if we get back to the Super Bowl, inevitably something will get in the way of a win. Even if we get back to the Super Bowl, inevitably something will get in the way of a win. He pasted it twice, but since you paid $10 for that, I'm going to read the damn thing. It's hard, but I think you could make the argument if they're not playing the greatest quarterback of his generation, they probably win one of those too. Like, I think the fact that they are playing Mahomes and Andy Reid has to enter into it somewhere. And look, you ultimately have to beat the people in front of you. I get that. But like it's entirely possible the Niners could get back to the Super Bowl and be playing somebody else.
Yeah, and that somebody else could be Lamar, who just kicked their teeth in.
Could be, but I'd like to see. I don't think Brock's going to throw 4 picks again if they play the Ravens.
5, I believe.
Well, no, Darnold threw one. Don't forget.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Sammy D. They didn't go into too much about that game either in receiver.
Not a ton. I mean, they covered it a little bit, but that's why I thought it was 5, because at the end of that game, when they're going away from it, they said they had Greg Papa say that's the 5th interception or something.
Yeah,
like
the way they cut it made it seem like Brock threw all 5, but he quote unquote got hurt, got benched, whatever. And Sammy D came in.
I don't like reliving the bad games, if you can't tell.
Oh, yeah, I do. I mean,
it just pisses me off again. And I already struggle enough with getting mad about stupid crap.
Andre says it's just hard to get to the Super Bowl, not because they can't, because seasons are long and injuries happen. Yeah, that's true. But, other teams had good luck too and good fortune. I was thinking that too, because, they were showing some of the plays like the Ayuk play in the NFC Championship game. And people act like the 49ers are the only team that had some fortunate things happen for them. Other teams do too. And other teams have unfortunate things that happen. So like the Lions, like they could have easily lost their playoff game to Tampa Bay. But like, everybody acts like, oh no, they never had any adversity. Nothing, they never had anything come up 7s for them. Which, of course, is not true. It happens good and bad for every team.
I mean, it came up 7s for them just because Goff did not look like Goff. And he just got a big new contract because of it.
I will say, I'm still skeptical of Dan Campbell because I want to see if he can have this success without a great offensive coordinator like Ben Johnson, because he's not an offensive coach. And that's a hard thing for any non-offensive coach to do.
Right.
But man, does he get he totally got the pulse of that team. So when they win the playoff game, when they clinch a division, he calls all the old guard Lions in the post-game speech. He's like, all the guys that were here, before me, like through all the losing. And he calls them in front of the team and he gives them a game ball. And he's like, this is for you. The rest of the season is for everybody. This playoff win is for you guys who were killing yourselves when we sucked. And I was like, holy crap, this guy's making everybody in the room love him.
Yeah. He's a very good motivator. X's and O's, that's the question mark. And that's why, as you mentioned, if he loses a great offensive coordinator, does he suddenly fall off? Because he's not the X's and O's guy.
Right.
I mean, you can go look at Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. They managed to stay afloat, and he's managed to keep his job. But he's not an X's and O's guy. He was never a coordinator before getting that head coaching job. And he held on to Matt Canada for years when it was obvious he was terrible. And I would say that's probably because he doesn't understand the X's and O's quite as well as he should and was unwilling to admit that this is not working. The guy is just not good enough at it.
And who did they hire after Matt Canada? Arthur Smith. Oh, God. We got trolls in the chat.
Can I just say, things around here? I live in Pittsburgh. They are all players are raving about Arthur Smith, saying this guy's a genius. I've learned. There's literally, who was it? It might have been God. I got Jennings stuck in my head. Pickens, their star wide receiver. I think it might have been him. He said just a couple of weeks ago, and I made news here, that he's learned more from the offseason with Arthur Smith than he learned his entire career to this point. And he's year 3.
Well, that may be true, but I saw what Arthur Smith do in Atlanta, and he couldn't get the ball to the great playmakers that he had. So sorry, I'm not encouraged by that. Greeny in the chat says we barely made it to the Super Bowl. But you made it. The guy with the lowest grade in medical school, you know what they call him? Doctor. He still passes. you're complaining because we barely made making a Super Bowl is hard. It's
How
really
many teams like coast into the Super Bowl?
right. Like, what are we talking
The
about
Chiefs,
here?
the Chiefs, not this past season, but the season before, if I'm not mistaken, every single game in the playoffs, they had to come back from being at least 10 points down. They
Yeah.
came back from a double-digit deficit in every single game. Well, they barely won the Super Bowl. You think they care?
Yeah, I mean, even last year, they whooped up Miami 26-7 in that freezing game. They beat Buffalo by 3. They beat Baltimore 17-10, and they beat San Francisco 25-22. Like, the days of teams just ripping through the playoffs and dominating everybody, those are over. Like, go look at like the
They're
past.
long gone. They're 30 years gone. The salary cap happened.
We barely made the Super Bowl. I mean, come on, man. Now we're complaining because they don't, I guess, overcoming the biggest deficit in the history of the NFC Championship game wasn't impressive.
How dare they have to pass more than 10 times in an NFC Championship game?
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the crazy thing, too. People are like, well, Jimmy made a Super Bowl in my mentions. And I'm like, one guy overcame the biggest deficit in the history of the NFC Championship game. One guy threw 8 passes. He only completed 6, by the way. 2 of those passes were incomplete. Like, they are not the same thing. So, I don't understand some people sometimes. All right. Anything else from receiver that you wanted to mention? Deebo saying he was fine with kicking the field goal in overtime.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, there's a lot of little things, but nothing like there was no big, huge takeaway. There was no like, ooh, he said that, or any of those. Like, I feel like there was very little controversy in this show this year. Devontae Adams is obviously the one that's going to have all the controversy because he was just ripping that team. Like, full on, even not just Jimmy, but like McDaniels before that. Like, he sugarcoated it a little bit. He didn't quite like fire him when he could have in like the postseason interviews. As we know, those interviews happen postseason. He could have just been like, yeah, McDaniels sucked, or I've never seen a coach act that way or be so arrogant. But he didn't go that far, but he was very much like criticizing everything about that leadership in that offense.
He was super happy that that Antonio Pierce was there.
I just saw today he came out and said that Aiden O'Connell is the starter until Gardner Minshew takes it away. Like, he said O'Connell is the starter unless Minshew comes in and takes it away, because like he basically saying like Minshew has to earn it. He's not just going to be given the starter. O'Connell's. So he's certainly didn't dislike, I would say, the people that replaced Garoppolo.
Yeah, the Garoppolo thing was woo. All I could think of was if the 49ers lost, could it have gone down exactly the same way? Because it's not like, look, Jimmy had his share of throws like that in San Francisco. We would see him every week. But they call winning the ultimate deodorant. And I think it was definitely doing some work in the case of the 49ers. That is for sure. All right, let's get to some of the Warren Sharp nuggets and numbers from his preview guide. If you don't know Warren Sharp, you can search for him on Twitter. He has a website, Sharp. I think it's like sharpfootball.com. He does like so much work on all the teams. It's fascinating. Let's get to the biggest takeaway I had. The Niners faced a loaded box on 83% of their rushing attempts last year. Not surprising. That was highest in the NFL. 83% of their attempts had a loaded box, and Christian McCaffrey still led the league in rushing and did not lead the league in rushing attempts. That is pretty damn impressive, Levin. But I do wonder if things will get a little easier for him if next year teams start saying, we can't make it be this easy for Brock Purdy. We have to start to play Brock Purdy a little more. And maybe that actually opens things up for Christian McCaffrey a little bit.
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit early on in the offseason, that if they go to Ayuk more and they build the offense a little bit more geared towards getting Ayuk the ball, that's going to force the defense to react. Because the reason why they can stack the box and not necessarily get away with it, but limit it to some degree, is because if they're not going to run, the most likely scenario is they're trying to throw a screen or a slant to Deebo, so stacking the box doesn't hurt them. That helps them get to Deebo faster. So there's not much of the risk factor in stacking the box because the two things that the Niners want to do most involve needing to stack the box to stop it. And that's why, like, I would like to see that deeper passing game become a focal point of the passing game because it will open up everything else. So yeah, Christian McCaffrey might not get as many carries as he got last year, but he might get just as many yards because he might be able to average 6 yards a carry. And Deebo might not get, 10 targets a game. He might not get the rushing that he got, but he could still get just as many yards and actual effect because he's going to have a lot more space if Ayuk is beating them first. Get Ayuk early in the game, and then if the defense adjusts to Ayuk getting going early in the game, now you can really destroy them with all that other stuff that you like to go to.
Christian McCaffrey is a freaking monster, man. To lead the league in rushing with stacked boxes on 83% of your attempts is wild. Okay. The next thing I thought, what do we always say about the Kyle Shanahan offense, right? It's a play action offense. It's a play action offense. It actually wasn't last year. The Niners were 27th in play action usage rate on early downs in the first 3 quarters. So before basically you get to the fourth quarter and you may have to throw 1,000 times because you're down, or you're not throwing because you're up by a bunch and you're running. In the first 3 quarters in early downs, they did not use play action. They only used it on 29% of attempts. That's kind of been a shift in Kyle Shanahan since Brock Purdy took over.
And I think that's probably a feedback from Brock. I don't like it. I mean, we heard Jimmy say that. It just seemed like Kyle probably said, yeah, Jimmy, it doesn't matter either way, so I'm going to call what I want. But Jimmy talked openly about how he doesn't like his back being to the play because it gives him less time to read the defense. What is Brock best at? Reading the defense. That's his biggest strength. That's been his MO. So allowing him to keep his eyes on the backfield allows him to read faster. And I think the offense is better because of it. Like it's a question of what is going to give us a bigger advantage, doing play action and trying to get the defense to bite on it, or allowing Brock that extra second of scanning the defense to find the open guy. And I think it's clear that Kyle has decided giving Brock that extra second is more valuable.
But it's interesting because a lot of people that watch football today that, I think buy into some of the analytics and some of the advanced stats say that play action makes life easier for a quarterback, for any quarterback, not just 49ers quarterbacks, that play action in general makes life easier. And the 49ers could certainly go that route with the best running back in the league. And they largely haven't, or at least, less than they have. Certainly, like I said, they were 27th last year. So that really surprised me that is definitely a change in Kyle's offense, because it was definitely a play action offense when he was first hired.
Yeah. I mean, there's another aspect to it. It could have nothing to do with Brock. It could have to do with the fact that if you do play action, your offensive line has to hold up a split second longer. And he may not have trusted that offensive line to do that.
Well, yeah, but you can do bootlegs and stuff like that off the play action that help.
He hates his quarterbacks running.
Well, not running, but you could do a bootleg without your quarterback running. You're just moving the pocket for him. You're always quick to dismiss. You're very quick to dismiss, Levin.
Kyle does not like his quarterback having to move at all.
I think he's getting over that. Last year, the 49ers played the 15th toughest schedule of offenses. 15th toughest schedule of offenses. And we talked a lot about how they were third in points allowed and stuff like that. This year, at least according to Warren Sharp, which again, I value, I think he does a lot of good research. You may not, but according to Warren Sharp, he says this year, the 49ers defense will play, by my projections, the 4th toughest schedule of offenses in 2024. So we could be sitting here saying, this defense stinks, blah, 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 blah. And that they may not be as good, but also they're playing a tougher group of offenses than they did last year.
I would love to see, like, an historical, go back 10, 15, 20 years, and a correlation between a top defense affecting that stat. You know what I mean? Would the offenses that they faced last year ended up being sixth, seventh best, except for in the games they played the Niners, they did worse because the Niners were a good defense and it dragged them down to being 15th best. Like, I would like to see a correlation between how much a single team in game, because there's only 17 games, so there is a pretty large effect from a single game if you do really well, affecting that statistic.
It's fair. It probably affects it more if it's a division game and you happen to kick somebody's ass twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But if you just look at the 49ers schedule this year, I mean, damn,
Yeah.
they're going to play the Jets week 1, who are probably going to be much better on offense, you would think, assuming Aaron Rodgers is upright. The Rams are good. They obviously play them twice. The Cardinals will probably be better. They got to play the Chiefs. They got to play Dallas. They got to play Green Bay. They got to play Buffalo. They got to play Miami. They got to play Detroit. That defense is going to earn their money this year for sure.
Yeah, and it's a great year to have a defensive coordinator learning on the job, isn't it?
Don't worry, Brandon Staley's here. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, that would be a concern. It's one of those that, like, okay, if they go into the season and the defense is struggling, it's going to go from just being that's interesting, like what you mentioned. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. But if they start out the season struggling, it's going to go from interesting to, all right, that's a full-on red alarm going off. Needs to be dealt with right now because there's a problem here.
Yeah, the defense is clearly going to be a focus right out of the gate. I mean, you're playing Aaron Rodgers week 1. So talk about a baptism by fire. You know Rodgers is going to want to go out and light it up because he was hurt last year, because, you know, people have given him crap for missing the mandatory minicamp and all that stuff. So the Niners defense week 1 right out of the gate is going to have a tough test.
Good news is the bus is not holding out this year. So,
yeah, hopefully we should get good Nick Bosa this year. The other thing that Warren Sharp pointed out basically is that the Niners have been going 2 tight ends more than pretty much anybody else except for Mike McDaniel. Either 2 tight ends or 2 running backs. I don't know why. Okay. They were actually better in 11 personnel.
That makes more sense. I was like, 2 tight ends. I didn't see them run that a whole lot. You then said or 2 running backs. Okay, well, they're counting juice in that.
Yeah.
That would be why the Niners lead that statistic. They don't run 2 tight ends a whole lot. That's one of the reasons why I think they went out and got Logan Thomas, because they want to run 2 tight ends more. It's the fact that Juice is on the field for like 70% of snaps.
They had a 53% success rate out of 11 personnel. They had a 50% success rate out of 2 running back sets. Maybe a small sample size, but still, I would like to see them open it up a little more. But the Niners like to go heavy. They like to go play action because they have so many guys that are versatile. I get it. And look, the offense was amazing last year. They scored 60 touchdowns. It was more than any other offense in the league. If you take out like points scored by the defense, just look at points scored by the offense, I believe the 49ers were first in the NFL last year. They were friggin' amazing, man. So, you know, I know people like to criticize Kyle, this, that, and the other thing. The offense is pretty damn good.
The offense should be the best in the league. And I personally take the best is not always the highest scoring. The best is the most unstoppable. And the Niners led the league in points per drive last year because the Niners run the ball. Shocker there. What that does is it limits how many opportunities you have. The Niners generally get 1 less drive per game because they're shortening the game by running so much. So they had less plays to get the total points and to lead the league. But as you mentioned, they had the most touchdowns. They had the highest touchdown rate per drive, and they led that one by a pretty good margin. And they had the most points per drive. That, to me, is the best offense in the league. It's not always the one that scores the most points on the season because it's about how unstoppable you are. And the Niners are the most unstoppable offense in the league.
There's no other team. The 49ers are the only team since 2000 that had a 47% success rate on early down running back runs while facing a loaded box. Like, they're insane. They still have that element of, after all this time, here we come. We don't care if you know. We don't care if you gear up to stop it. we're going to smash this football in your face and there's nothing you can do about it. And it is freaking awesome. It's so much fun to watch.
It's something you try not to take for granted, because running the ball is not normally this easy, and that's why a lot of teams have made the running aspect the afterthought. I that just reminded me, like, Christian McCaffrey had all those touchdowns. I think they showed Christian McCaffrey scoring twice.
Yep.
In that.
It wasn't a McCaffrey, it wasn't a
I
McCaffrey.
know, but like he scored more than a touchdown per game.
If you go and look, though, when the Niners are in trouble, even throughout the season, this is something that Vish pointed out. Whatever game it might be, when they're in trouble, when they need a big drive, they go to 23 and they go to 19. And that's it. And there's a point actually in the receiver documentary, I think, when against the Lions in the NFC Championship game, when they're down big, where Deebo goes to CMC on the sidelines and he goes, it's about time we start ping-ponging that ball back between you and me, right? Like the Niners know. When they need plays, it's 23 and 19. It's not Ayuk. It's not Kittle. It's not Jawan. It's those two guys.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because I don't know that that's necessarily the best offense. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like certainly there were times that Kyle has a crutch. He thinks in his head, I just got to get the ball in their hands. If I get the ball in their hands, they're so good, they'll take care of the rest. And he tries to force feed them when the defense knows it. And there's other opportunities there that if Kyle didn't have his crutch, didn't get tunnel vision, they would have utilized. I like, that's the one thing I want to see Kyle like evolve on. If the defense is saying, hey, we're not going to let you get Deebo going, go away from it. Don't wait till the fourth quarter, because that's what he does. He'll sit and he'll just keep trying until it's like, all right, we're about to lose this game. Let me try something else.
They didn't make a mention of all the targets to Deebo in the Super Bowl. Like I was wondering if they were going to say like, oh, Kyle dialed up the game plan for me or anything like that. They really didn't. I don't know. They kind of brushed like I was expecting a whole episode on the Super Bowl, to be honest with you. And it wasn't. It was like half an episode on the Super Bowl and half on the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, they split the last episode on it. I feel like they could have definitely had 10 episodes this year. It was I would say that something was probably said to them by the NFL that, like, if you want to keep doing this show, don't look for controversy. Don't go looking for the sound bites and things like that. Like, cover what happened, give some insight from the background, tell the story of what happened, but don't sit there and like try to throw in things that are going to get you headlines just to throw them in there.
Kevin Allen says they're doing long snapper next season starring Tabor Pepper. That would be fantastic. I would love an offensive line version because I think it would be, you have to pick the right offensive lineman. That's the thing. Yeah. Like if Trent would do it, he'd be fascinating because he's, great in front of a microphone. You need like interesting people, but I think it would be awesome to do an offensive line one, to be honest with you.
I think we would think it's awesome. I don't see Netflix doing it.
Yeah, like, probably not.
It's not going to resonate in the same manner. Running back is coming.
Yeah, I would imagine running back is coming. They asked Travis.
Once your running back is coming, that means the Niners will probably be featured again, because it'll probably be Christian McCaffrey.
I don't know if he would go for that.
He might not.
He's kind of, all about the team. Doesn't want to talk about myself. Like he's kind of a team first guy. He's not like super interesting. Although there are other running backs that are.
That is true, but if they're going to do a running back show, it's slim pickings these days.
I think I would love to see Raheem Mostert in Miami. I think you could include him on one. Raheem is a very personable guy. Derrick Henry in Baltimore with Lamar and that team would be really damn good. I'd like to see that.
I'd like to see Josh Jacobs going to Green Bay. He likes to talk. So like you might get some dirt on like the Raiders and comments there, but also like he's replacing a guy that was super popular in Green Bay. he's going to a team that's expected to be a Super Bowl contender.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be a very interesting aspect. And he's probably going to be able to talk and carry some interviews.
And I think it would be interesting, not because I think this guy's necessarily good anymore, but you could do Zeke Elliott in Dallas. You get the Cowboys aspect of it. You get like him at the end of his career, but with a Dallas team that's probably going to have a good offense again next year. I would include him in that mix. I think it'd be like
there's a couple others I would go first, like Saquon in Philly. I would do Eckler. I'm trying to remember where he went, but like he's transitioning. Yeah, it's something like I think it is Washington, but he's transitioning from being like the face of a franchise, basically, because he was the face, I would say, for a year or two before Herbert came.
Lee Ving says, "What are you talking about? Zeke plays center.
He can do both shows at the same time, running back and offensive line.
Only at the end of playoff games for the Cowboy. That, I mean, until this year, that was his last play as a Cowboy, was when Aziz absolutely blew him up at the end of that playoff game when for some reason.
That was one that I thought, because I was thinking about it when I was watching the show, like, what is one that would be interesting? Because they've done quarterback, they've done wide receiver. As I mentioned, running back is risky because one, they just don't get featured that much anymore. Like Christian McCaffrey was the only 1,200-yard rusher, and like you just said, that was my other point. They get hurt so much, so it's a risk. But pass rusher would be an interesting one.
Yeah, and God, you talk about characters.
Micah Parsons, like top of the list right there.
Micah Parsons, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, TJ Watt.
Bosa's not going to do it, and Bosa's would be terrible on that show because he's got to do interviews, and carry episodes. But you got TJ Watt in with the Steelers. Like you have 4 or 5 guys there that are well spoken, top of the line guys.
Story 4x4 or Stovey 4x4ing says F Dallas. It made me think of, they do talk about in the series Kittle's F Dallas shirt. There's a lot about the Cowboys game in there, and Kittle said it cost him $15,000 and he doesn't regret it at all, and he might just do it again. Which yes, George,
they do play Dallas again this year.
I am here for that. Bring the shirt back, baby. He said he got them made for all the tight ends, but he was the only one that wore it.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. But
because the rest
did you notice how many times he said, like, yeah, I saw that on Twitter, or somebody sent that to me on Twitter, and I saw, like, he may not interact with people all too frequently, but he's there. He probably does not like us because we've talked about him, and based on that show, he's probably seen a thing or two that we've said about him.
Well, he saw the things that I said, because remember when I complimented him and he pulled out a tweet of mine that was old, but like he clearly had it where I said he wouldn't finish out his contract with the 49ers. So like he's online, he sees stuff. He told me when I interviewed him, his mom sends him like mean things that people say about him.
Does his mom follow you?
I don't know. Is she on Twitter? I have no idea. There's a lot about Kittle's family in this. A lot about the letters his dad writes to him. His 100-year-old grandma came to a game this year, and the whole stadium sang her happy birthday. That was the Cardinals game. There's a lot about his family.
Yeah, like I said, Claire might have more speaking parts than anybody else in the show, because she was interviewed for every game, and she was like, yeah, they showed what was happening on the field, but every time Kittle made a play, they went to the booth and showed Claire reacting, and a lot of times she was then saying something after. That's why I think she might have had the most speaking parts, because you have all the game clips where she's talking.
Best part, and respect for Claire Kittle, Super Bowl ends, the Chiefs throw the touchdown pass, and she is out. She bounces out of that suite. So she says, I'm not staying for this shite. She pieces out right after that, which is exactly, of course, how I felt, how we all felt. It was funny when they did a really good job. I won't totally spoil it. Let's just say, make sure you watch the part of the NFC Championship game when Ayuk makes the catch. They did a very good job of editing some of the reactions, and it was very, very cool. So shout out to the Netflix crew. Overall, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I didn't watch all of everybody else's part. I watched the first 2 or 3 episodes of the whole thing, and then I was just skipping to the 49er parts, but I thought it was very well done. I would absolutely be down for another position. And I hope they keep doing it. And it was nice to see a little bit of the, behind the scenes for the Niners.
Yeah, I definitely, it's worth watching. I do think that it was heavily edited. Like, you could feel that, like, they're constantly cutting the bad parts here. Like, especially when it came to like some of the locker room stuff and things like that, like when the team lost and stuff. Like, I feel like they cut a lot of the bad stuff, or they skipped over it super quick and tried to move on. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. Like, you're not necessarily seeing like, does Kittle or Deebo like vent and pop off and say things in the moment that they might regret later? They would never show it.
Yeah, I mean, if you thought you were getting like a raw, unedited version of things, you don't
No.
understand how
Yeah.
these shows get made. You reminded me before we go, halftime of the NFC Championship game, like nobody, at least the way they edited it, and again, we don't know, but like they really believed they were going to turn it around. Like part of Kyle's speech in the locker room was like, guys, this is not how our season is going to end. This is not who we are. We're going to turn it around. And like, they came out in the second half, and Deebo catches like one pass on the first drive, and he's like, let's freaking go. Like, they really believed that for whatever reason they got off to a slow start, but that it was going to turn. And boy, did it turn, because that game was tied before the fourth quarter started.
Yeah, it felt like in the moment, and it felt like rewatching it in the show, like it was the old cat knowing the drill and getting to halftime, and the young cats, the Detroit Lions, they're like, oh boy, like they even have Amon-Ra, St. Brown's family. One of his family members says, we're about to go to the Super Bowl. It's halftime. All right, you haven't been here before. You don't know what could happen. And it was like, it was the old school, the old cat coming, all right, I've let it go on long enough. I'm going to show you what it's really like.
And for Dan Campbell, it had to be frustrating because they showed a clip of his halftime speech, and he says, they are not going to go away. We have to make them go away. Like, it was not like we're going to the Super Bowl. Like, Dan Campbell was locked in, but I think I really think it was their inexperience. I think there was the fact that they were on the road, first of all, which I think really, is once things started to turn the 49ers way, I think it snowballed a little bit. And I definitely think there was a little like, holy crap. It was in the first half, it was, we're going to the Super Bowl. And then in the second half, it was, holy crap, we're going to the Super Bowl. Like, there was a little, like, they were shook a little bit.
Yeah, I for sure think they got shook. And that's one of the interesting things to see. Like, all right, are they going to be for real for the next couple of years? Because they have a couple year window here with their core. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs was a rookie. He is ridiculous. Like, he could become their star. Like, he could outshine Amon-Ra St. Brown in that offense. So does like Detroit rise to an even higher level? Or was this like a one and done where they like, yeah, they have talent, but they don't quite have the same motivation, right? Which we've seen that a lot more often than the other way. Put it that way. So it'd be interesting to see if they crumble or if they're the real deal. See if like Green Bay rises. Like, the NFC suddenly this year could be like wow, they're not the crap one team only conference anymore. Like, you could have Philly reestablish themselves. I don't think that's happening, but you could have Philly reestablish themselves, Green Bay rise, Detroit stay right there, and now you got the Niners with them, and it's like this 4-team star-studded, 11, 12 plus win teams going into the NFC playoffs. No, I did not include Dallas for a reason.
I was going to say Dallas maybe in the Rams may be in that mix. It's not going to be an easy trip by any stretch of the imagination. We know. You could tell that the 49ers thought they had a good team. When they beat Dallas, Bosa says, we've never had a team like this.
Yeah.
And they admitted during the season that they were smelling themselves, that they thought they were hot stuff. And then they lost 3 straight. And Fred said in the locker room, like, hey, we learned our lesson. We're not taking this stuff for granted anymore. But the other thing is, like, they don't have to be better than last year's team. They really don't. They just have to win the Super Bowl. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, But we've seen the 49ers have what we think is the best team in the league. I thought the 2 Super Bowls against the Chiefs, I thought the Niners had the better team. I thought they were better than the Ravens in 2012. It does not matter. You just had to be better on that day. And on that, in Super Bowl 58, the Chiefs were 1 possession better than the 49ers. And that's why it sucks. But that's really all it takes. You just have to be better on that day. So they don't have to be better than the 2023 49ers.
I don't think there's any question that the Niners have been the most talented team in the league for at least the last 2 years since Brock Purdy took over. It doesn't matter. Like you said, what matters is who has the best quarterback. That's truly what matters. That's about 80% of it. If you go into the game and you have the best quarterback, you got a really, really good chance of winning that game. That's just the way the NFL is. It's a little bit less, I would say, in college football. The NFL is a little bit more QB dependent just because it's, I think, so much faster, that there's so many less people capable of processing fast enough. Whereas in college, it's a lot more about the scheme. If you got a good scheme, you got so many undisciplined young kids out there playing that you can spread them out and beat them. It's a little bit different in the NFL, and it's QB driven. And that's why it was so frustrating when they have the better quarterback. No question, the Chiefs have the best quarterback in the league, and they're getting that quarterback allowed to do whatever he wants because the offensive line's holding like crazy in front of him so that he gets all the daylight. Like, that's what's frustrating me. They already have the advantage, NFL. You don't need to help them out.
Bazzy Mayan says every single year that the Niners quarterbacks remain healthy all season. The Niners went to the Super Bowl under Kyle. I don't see why that'll change now. Oh, by the way, the last time Kyle Shanahan's quarterback was healthy, when he wasn't in San Francisco, he went to the Super Bowl. Kyle can say the last 3 years my quarterback was healthy enough to start every game, I've gone to the Super Bowl. Matt Ryan, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy. It's crazy, but it's true. Trip Aces says Tampa Bay defense killed Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Yes, they did when his entire starting offensive line was out. Let's see the 49ers face the Chiefs when his entire starting offensive line is out. Seattle killed Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. Yes, they did. It was one of the greatest defenses of all time. And it was a Peyton Manning that, while he had an incredible year that year, physically, he was not the same Peyton Manning. I mean, like, let's look at the context of these things here. Like, damn, I know everyone likes to say, no excuses for Kyle, no excuses. And I get it. We all want a championship. But, like, there are reasons that things happen. Doesn't excuse it. But you can't just say, well, Tampa Bay played great against Mahomes. So, like, you can't dismiss the fact that his whole starting offensive line was hurt.
It is what it is. I mean, you're getting into the realm of stuff I don't want to go into because it just bothers me. Like, it ruins my day, night, whatever you want to talk about. Because it's like, okay, when are the dice going to roll our way?
Right.
Because for the last, 13 years, whatever it is, since Harbaugh, it's been, ooh, we're there. It's going to happen. And then somebody rolls like triple or double sixes like 8 times in a row for the Niners to lose. And that was the only way they could possibly lose. Like, it's like you get to the point in the game, you're like, wow, they're really going to win this game. And then it doesn't happen. Like, even the Harbaugh Super Bowl, when they got down to that goal line at the end of the game, I thought, wow, they're really going to finish this comeback and win this game. And then they call 4 freaking fades in a row.
I still think they're going to win when I watch the game. It's unreal. Yeah, they really do. But see, here's the difference. This year, I never got comfortable in the game. I never got to a moment where I was like, the 49ers are going to win this game.
Well, no, because Mahomes was over there, but they were up 20-10 at one point, and they did take the lead multiple times in the fourth quarter, where I remember thinking to myself, I mean, the defense has been getting their butts kicked. They have a turnover or a stop coming at some point. They didn't get a single one.
God, it stings. It hurts so much. God.
I was watching the dang receiver show in the Super Bowl, and when the Chiefs start their comeback, after they showed the scoreboard of 2010, I noticed my legs started bouncing. Like, I was getting nervous. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I know what's going to happen. Dang it.
Right. Yeah. You're like freaking out when you watch the Titanic start to see the iceberg. Like, yeah, I did. Like, I got pumped up before the game started. It was crazy, but hopefully this year has a different ending. That's all we can do. That's all we can do. I'm back on it. Hopefully they can do it. I was just looking before the show started. The Patriots have the record. Most consecutive conference championship games reached. It's 8. They were playing for the Super Bowl every year for 8 straight years. The Chiefs right now are in the midst of the second longest streak. They are at 6 straight. The longest
if I'm
streak.
not mistaken, that streak got broken by the Brady injury.
I don't know off the top of my head, honestly.
It had to have, because after the Brady injury, Brady wasn't there 8 more years. So it had to be like 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, it's only 6 years. When was that streak?
I think it started in 2011. They lost the Super Bowl, so they obviously won the conference championship. They lost in the conference championship in 2012, 2013, won the Super Bowl in 2014, lost in the conference championship in 2015, won the Super Bowl in 2016, lost it in 2017, won it in 2018. So it ended after
and the Patriots could lose for the next decade before those fans can complain.
Right.
As I just pointed out, they had won 3 Super Bowls during the streak I was thinking it was during. And then after that streak, they went to 8 straight conference championships and won multiple Super Bowls again. No complaining for that fan base for the next 2 decades.
If the 49ers somehow manage to get to the conference championship game this year, that would be 4 straight years. That would tie the NFC record, which is currently held by the Dallas Cowboys, who've done it twice.
They did it in the 90s and the 70s.
Yeah. So it would tie the record. Oh, also the Andy Reid Eagles went 4 straight years too.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's something the Niners can shoot for. Again, I know people are tired of making the conference championship game, but I still am grateful every time
I know one fan base down there in the good old state of Texas that would be ecstatic to make a single NFC championship game.
Right. Like, I do think that there are Cowboy fans right now. If you said to them, you're not going to win a Super Bowl, but you're going to make the conference title game, I think they would be like, well, it's not a total failure. I think they would say that.
Yeah, to that point. I think Jerry Jones, deep down, if you got true honesty out of him, would admit, yeah, I would take that.
Oh,
because if he makes a conference championship, I think it takes the kind of monkey off his back. Because right now, like, the critics are really starting to chirp again of like, Jerry Jones is the reason why they can't get over the hump. It's Jerry Jones. It's Jerry Jones. He's the GM. It's his fault. So I feel like if he got to a conference championship game for the first time in 30 years, he could sit back and be like, see, I am a good GM.
Well, even though he's not. I mean,
right.
Like, when they got to those conference championship games in the 90s, it was because of Jimmy Johnson. It was all due to Jimmy Johnson. He engineered the Herschel Walker.
Not trade. Barry Switzer?
Yeah.
Come on now.
No, hard pass. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's show. Those are our thoughts on receiver. Sorry if you didn't watch it and we spoiled it for you. There was a Netflix documentary about Deebo and George Kittle. If you expected us not to talk about it on the 49ers podcast during the 40 days of death between minicamp and training camp, you're out of your freaking mind. Anyway.
Yeah, if we didn't talk about it today, by the time we talk about it next week, it's old news.
Exactly. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everyone. Levin, great shirt, as I said. I appreciate it. I will speak with you next week.